We all know the fairy tale, a kind-hearted girl, a wicked stepfamily, a magical makeover, and a glass slipper that leads to a happily ever after. But what if we flip the script? What if the so-called ugly stepsister wasn't the villain, but the victim? In 2025, the ugly stepsister took everything you thought you knew about Cinderella and twisted it into a chilling, thought-provoking horror story. Gone is the magic wand. In its place, cosmetic surgery, starvation, and a desperate fight for love in a world obsessed with beauty. Welcome back to your nerdy show. I'm your host, Spoiler Master. Today we're breaking down the 10 most shocking and fascinating differences between the classic Cinderella tale and its twisted, gruesome reimagining. Get ready to see this fairy tale like you never have before. This isn't your childhood bedtime story. This is Cinderella Unfiltered. The protagonist, from passive beauty to desperate striver. Classic Cinderella is the embodiment of the ideal fairy tale heroine, gentle, graceful, and endlessly patient. She's more a symbol than a person, quietly enduring hardship until magic steps in to save her. But the ugly stepsister shifts the focus to Elvira, a character long labeled as a villain. She's no saint. She's impulsive, bitter, and envious, but she's also human. Her pain is raw, her longing for love and recognition deeply relatable. This pivot transforms the story from a morality tale into a haunting psychological character study. Cinderella teaches us to wait. Elvira teaches us what happens when waiting leads nowhere, and desperation takes over. Magic versus surgery, the method of transformation. Cinderella's magical transformation is pure fantasy. A flick of the wand turns rags to riches, mice to horses, and dreams to reality. It's painless, elegant, and symbolic of virtue rewarded. Elvira, on the other hand, undergoes something far more brutal. Her fairy godmother is the surgeon's scalpel. She forces herself through starvation, has her ribs crushed, injects chemicals into her lips, and even swallows a living tapeworm, all to fit a societal mold of beauty. Her transformation isn't a reward, it's a punishment. It's a savage commentary on how real-life women are often expected to mutilate themselves in order to be seen as worthy. Prince Charming, savior versus symbol. In traditional versions, Prince Charming is the prize, handsome, noble, and hopelessly smitten at first sight. He saves Cinderella and gives her a new life. But in The Ugly Stepsister, Prince Julian is no hero. He barely exists beyond Elvira's imagination. He's not someone who will rescue her. He's the symbol of a dream that's always just out of reach. Elvira's obsession with him reveals less about him and more about her craving for approval. In the end, he's irrelevant. The goal isn't romance. The goal is identity. Cinderella gets the prince. Elvira gets to look in the mirror and finally see herself.
Pieces. The shoulder's free.
Good versus evil. Clear lines versus blurred realities. In fairy tales, it's easy to tell who's good and who's bad. Cinderella is good because she's sweet. The stepsisters are bad because they're vain. The stepmother, just plain wicked. But the ugly stepsister blurs every line. Elvira is cruel, but she's also a product of a toxic environment. Her jealousy stems from a deep well of neglect and trauma. Even Agnes, the Cinderella figure, isn't faultless. She's prettier, yes, but she's also complicit in Elvira's isolation. No one is purely evil. No one is perfectly good. Instead, every character carries wounds, and those wounds bleed into how they treat each other. The story becomes less about heroes and villains, and more about victims and survivors. Female relationships. Rivalry versus reflection. Cinderella's relationship with her stepsisters is classic antagonism. They mock her, rip her dress, and fight for the prince. They are obstacles, not characters. But in The Ugly Stepsister, the relationship between Elvira and Agnes is far more layered. Elvira envies Agnes's beauty and composure, but deep down, they're both suffering under the same oppressive mother. Their rivalry is a mirror, a reflection of how women are pitted against each other in the quest for approval. Rather than supporting one another, they compete for love that was never unconditional. Their tension becomes a metaphor for internalized misogyny and lost sisterhood.
Does not bode well.
That's a lovely dress she's got on.
And how pretty she is.
Concentrate.
The stepmother, one-dimensional villain versus systemic oppressor. Lady Tremaine in Cinderella is the prototype of a fairy tale villain. Cold, elegant, cruel for the sake of cruelty. But Rebecca, the mother in The Ugly Stepsister, is more terrifying because she feels real. She doesn't cackle or plot. She simply demands perfection from her daughters and punishes them when they fall short. She embodies the generational trauma of beauty standards passed from mother to daughter. Her control is psychological, her manipulation cloaked in the language of love. Rebecca isn't just one evil woman. She's the voice of a society that says you're not good enough unless you change everything about yourself.
Elvira, kan du vara så...
The slipper scene. Romantic gesture versus grotesque climax. The glass slipper is perhaps the most iconic moment in Cinderella. It's whimsical, romantic, a symbol of destiny and belonging. Only Cinderella's foot fits because she is uniquely special. But in The Ugly Stepsister, this moment is nothing short of a horror scene. Elvira, desperate to be chosen, mutilates her feet to fit into the slipper. It's bloody, agonizing, and symbolic of the extreme lengths people go to for acceptance. What was once a symbol of magic becomes a metaphor for self-destruction. It asks us to reconsider. Why do we force ourselves to fit into molds never made for us? The ending. Fairy tale closure versus uncomfortable liberation. Cinderella ends with a wedding, a castle, and a happily ever after. It ties everything up with a bow. Elvira's story ends with a tapeworm writhing in the toilet. No prince, no ball, just her, alone, but finally free. Expelling the parasite is grotesque but symbolic. It represents shedding societal expectations and the internalized belief that she must suffer to be loved. The ending is not pretty, but it's honest. Instead of a fairy tale, Elvira gets a choice. She walks away from her mother, her obsession, and the illusion of transformation. She chooses self-acceptance over fantasy, and that, in its own way, is liberation. Tone and genre. Whimsical fantasy versus body horror. Satire Cinderella is sweet, safe, and soothing. It's a bedtime story about hope and magic. The Ugly Stepsister is the complete opposite. It's disturbing, visceral, and filled with grotesque imagery. Body horror is used not just for shock, but as social critique. Each surgical procedure, each scene of self-harm, exposes the absurd lengths society asks women to go for the promise of love. There's no singing mice or pumpkin carriages. Instead, there's blood, scars, and haunting metaphors. It's not meant to comfort, it's meant to provoke, disturb, and ultimately awaken.
But fate may yet be kind to us, girl.
Purpose, moral lesson versus societal critique. Cinderella's message is clear. Be kind, be patient, and magic will come. It's a tale designed to teach values, obedience, modesty, goodness. But The Ugly Stepsister isn't interested in teaching morals. It's here to challenge, to confront, to dissect the myth of the ideal woman. Elvira's journey is not about becoming better. It's about realizing she was never the problem. Her ugliness wasn't in her face, but in the way she was taught to hate herself. The film critiques beauty culture, parental control, and the weaponization of femininity. It doesn't offer answers. It offers a mirror and dares you to look.
And I'd like to wear it when I go to the palace.
Our nerdy thoughts. The tale of Cinderella has lasted for centuries because it adapts. In every generation, we retell it, reshape it, and project our fears onto it. The classic version gives us comfort, reminding us that good things come to good people. But The Ugly Stepsister strips away the illusion and shows us the cost of that ideal. One version makes us dream. The other forces us to confront the nightmare beneath the dream. And maybe we need both. Because while fairy tales help us believe in magic, twisted tales remind us that we are not alone in our pain, that the path to healing isn't always beautiful, but it's real. So the next time you hear Once Upon a Time, ask yourself, whose story are we telling? And whose are we finally ready to hear? From magic slippers to bloody sacrifices, Cinderella's story has taken a wild turn. Whether you prefer the fairy tale fantasy or the raw realism, one thing's clear. How we tell stories says a lot about the world we live in. If you enjoyed this deep dive, don't forget to like, comment your favorite version, and subscribe for more twisted takes on classic tales. Until next time, stay curious and keep questioning the stories you think you know.
No, what the heck, I'll laugh anyway.